Hello, and welcome to the Warren County Library System. My name is Sandy Roberts, and I'm the Makerspace Coordinator for the Warren County Library. Today, I'm bringing you a very special project that's part of our New Jersey Makers Day DIY at-home experience. Normally, for New Jersey Makers Day, libraries across the state share wonderful projects revolving around crafts and STEM and all kinds of things that you can make and create. Unfortunately, this year, we're not able to be together in person, so we're bringing you a really fun virtual experience that you can enjoy at home with your family and friends. Throughout the day, we've got different recordings being posted every 45 minutes or so. We started at 10 a.m. Make sure that if you haven't checked out those videos, you go to our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, or our website where you can watch any videos that are shared today. We'll be going all the way till 4 p.m. with great crafts and science activities throughout the day. So I encourage you to take a look at our schedule at www.warrenlib.org. You can find our New Jersey Makers Day page there or check our events calendar. We have great New Jersey STEM Month projects all month long, including take and make bags that you can pick up curbside. Every week we have a new project. We have great speakers every Friday afternoon and other days of the week as well. And then, of course, we have today's wonderful offerings. So I hope that you take advantage of all of those great programs. And we also have a wonderful, diverse group of programs for Women's History Month. So lots to do at the library this month. All right, let's talk about my project with you today. We are going to be making an anthotype. And what this basically means is that we're going to use natural pigments that are reactive, that are degraded by UV light from the sunlight to make our own prints, okay? It's actually a surprisingly easy thing to do. There's some great science behind why it works, and it's really fun because it's non-toxic printmaking that the entire family can enjoy. So let's talk a little bit about the science first. So anthotypes are typically attributed to Sir William Herschel, who invented and shared the process in 1842. But the truth is, he was actually using the work of Mary Somerville, who had shared her research on anthotypes with him. This is, unfortunately, too common a story, and one of the reasons that we try to highlight important women in history this month. Mary Somerville did a ton of research using different natural dyes that she made from the petals of plants, from herbs, from spices, and shared that with Herschel, who then was able to take his male scientific personality and name and get it published and shared more widely. But the idea is pretty simple. You're going to take crushed petals, ground dried herbs or spices, mix them with typically distilled water or mineral spirits or a bit of alcohol, and coat paper with that. Expose that paper to sunlight, blocking certain areas with objects that you want to print. And the UV, ultraviolet light in sunlight, degrades some of the pigments. And as that happens, the areas that are protected from sunlight become your print. You then react it with a fixer, in this case it's going to be borax, to then set that print so it doesn't continue to degrade. Now, there are a lot of things that you can use for anthotypes. We will be using turmeric, which is a very common spice that you can find at pretty much any grocery store or discount store. It is a beautiful golden yellow. It's used a lot in Indian cooking. It smells very earthy. I love it. The compound in it that we're really interested in is the curcumin, and that's the reactive pigment that we're featuring today. But if you have things like poppies or peonies or red carnations, you can actually grind them up or put them through a blender with a bit of alcohol or distilled water to make a pigment dye. You can also use berries like black currants. Experiment once you get the basic idea down, because you can make all kinds of different color prints from absolutely natural things that you find in the grocery store or even in your backyard. And it's really fun to play with that science. Regardless, the process is pretty much similar. You're going to make your slurry, you're going to make your dye, you're going to coat your paper with it, and you're going to put your objects on it and put it outside in the sun. Once that's done, once you've exposed it, and it's going to take several hours. I want you to be aware of that. 2 to 3 hours is minimum in full sun. Some people leave their items in a nice bright window for up to 4 days to react them. It really comes down to what look you're going for. If you want a really white background and just very stark items, you're going to want to expose it for as long as possible. If you don't mind more of a monochromatic print look, then you can expose it for less time. But generally, the rule of thumb is the more direct the sunlight, the less time you need to expose it. I tend to wait until midday, and I put my prints out like somewhere really bright, you know, on my driveway or in the yard. Usually I try to find a nice flat space because you don't want lots of shadows. They will affect your print. And you're just going to expose them for as long as you're able. The borax comes in the final step. When you bring it back inside, and you're going to make a borax solution. Borax has a chemical called sodium tetraborate. And what this does is it chemically binds to the curcumin in the turmeric. And it makes this organometallic component that fixes to the paper. And it can't wash away, and it doesn't degrade in sunlight. So we use that chemical reaction to set the print, and it darkens the print as well, so that all those little details get captured. You're then going to rinse all of that off really well, okay, and frame and let your print dry and frame your print. Now, a lot of people do also use a coat of maybe acrylic or UV sealant, as you might use for scrapbooking, to protect their print even further. But even just putting it behind glass will protect it to some degree. So that's the basic science. And like I said, many different pigments work. Today we're going to go with turmeric because it's easy and very reliable, even if you're using inexpensive turmeric. So that is the science of what we're doing. Okay, let's talk supplies. First and foremost, turmeric. Okay, you want to get the freshest you are able. If you have an older bottle of turmeric or a less expensive brand of turmeric, you may just end up needing to use a little more in your dye. It's not a big deal. In fact, if you're going to make a lot of prints, if you decide to do this with a pod or your family group or with a camp, you may want to go to Costco and get the big thing of turmeric and just do a higher concentration. This is what I tend to use at home, so it's what I use for printing. And you can adjust this based on your own experiments as you go through. You're also going to need alcohol. I'm using 91% isopropyl alcohol. You can get this at any pharmacy, at most groceries or department stores, big box stores. If you can't find 91%, try 70%, try 50%. The truth is, it'll just take longer to dry your paper before you do your print. You can even use distilled water if you don't have any alcohol on hand. Some people use vodka, cheap vodka. That's usually pretty easy to get. That will work. Some people even use different oils, though I find with this process, that gets a little messy. So I like 91% alcohol. It really extracts the turmeric color really quickly, and it dries really fast, so I can get to the fun part of creating my print. So that's what I recommend. You will need borax. Again, you can find this at most big box stores or grocery stores. It's typically used for cleaning laundry. 1 box of borax will last you through many projects. You can use this also for making borax crystals, for making slime. Heck, put it in your wash and make your wash cleaner and happier. But today we're going to use a fairly small amount. So 1 box can be shared. It'll last you. Okay, so those are our chemicals. Now, what else do we need? Well, obviously, measuring cups, measuring spoons, okay, because I'm going to be giving you some recipes to follow. You're going to need some jars. Okay, so I use a basic canning jar to mix up my borax. You can do that in a bowl or in a, any kind of a pouring mechanism, whatever you've got. A jar I like because I can put the lid on and give it a good shake and it gets well mixed. You also want a tall jar to make your turmeric solution in. I'm going to be using a little disposable test tube I have sitting around. I keep these around in bulk for science experiments, but any kind of tall jar, and you'll see why later. We're going to need to pour off our liquid, and it's just a little bit easier in a tall container than it is in something shorter. So that's the only challenge there. You're going to need a small cup Once we make our dye, we're going to pour it into something so that we can easily paint, which brings me to any kind of a foam brush. These are inexpensive. Use one of the old ones because it's going to get stained. So if you have one that maybe isn't in great shape, perfect to use it for this project before you chuck it. It doesn't need to be in good condition, and you may be able to see it gets dyed pretty well here. All right, what are we going to print onto? Watercolor paper is your best bet, and you can get this at most craft stores. It's thick, it absorbs liquid without curling or falling apart, and that's really what you're looking for. If you don't have access to watercolor paper, try different thick papers. Sometimes like linen cotton bond paper that you might use for a resume can work, but it's worth spending a couple of dollars to get the inexpensive watercolor paper from your local craft store. Now, I have already cut my paper to fit the frame I plan to put it in, which is an 8x10 frame. I like to grab my frame first because then I can use the glass that came with the frame to hold all my objects on my paper when I put it outside so they don't blow away. So I cut my paper to fit my frame, and I've got my glass. Do take care to clean your glass. Any imperfections in that glass or junk on that glass can end up in your print. So give that a quick clean with some Windex or something like that before you use it. The scrap that I had left over, by the way, I'm just going to make some bookmarks. So I'm not going to put that to waste. I'm going to coat these too and put them out in the sun and have some bookmarks that I can give to friends. And maybe even you could put like the science of how it works on the back. Okay, so that's our paper. Other things you're going to need: a piece of cardboard, okay, because you're going to put all your print on this because you're going to want to be able to carry it around, kind of like a serving tray, because your paper is not strong enough once you put heavy items on it and the glass and everything. So a good piece of old cardboard, newspaper or cardboard to cover your surface. This will dye things, okay? We are using a dye. You can see my hands are dyed, so you may want to wear gloves if that is something that will upset you. Keep in mind that we are using something that does stain as you work. The last thing you're going to want are a couple binder clips because we're going to hold everything together. You're going to need a couple of trays. I like to use some old aluminum trays that I reuse for all kinds of things when I do my borax rinse, but you can do that right over the sink if that's easier for you. No big deal. I just find that this is convenient because I can let it soak in the borax a little bit and get a really good fix, but that's up to you. And I think that's pretty much everything that we need. Oh, I forgot the most important part, didn't I? You need something to make prints out of. This is easy. You can go crazy. You can find different cutout shapes of paper. Lace fabrics will work if you've got some of those sitting around. Find items in nature. It's spring. Go out on a scavenger hunt and find interesting leaf shapes or maybe ferns that are starting to come up out of the ground. Really go and search and see what you've got. Twigs, maybe a bit of your Christmas tree if it's still hanging out somewhere. All of those items will be great. You do ideally want things that you can kind of press down on the paper, but if you choose to use larger items like pine cones and rocks and things like that, they can still make really interesting prints. The other thing that's really fun is old bits and pieces of jewelry, especially if they're larger and they have like pieces through them, putting them all over the paper. So get creative. Just keep in mind that you're going to get a silhouette, basically, of whatever you put on that paper. And if it is a three-dimensional object, you may get different levels of exposure on your print. So make a bunch of your paper, let it all dry, and then go outside and have some fun trying different items. If worst comes to worst, you cut it up and again, use it for bookmarks, use it for cards if it isn't a perfect print that you want to frame. It's not a big deal. And the materials are so inexpensive that you can play and see what works for you. So that's what we need for our supplies. Okay, we have switched views so that we can get working. I'm going to start by mixing up my turmeric solution. So I'm going to get my turmeric and I am going to want 1 teaspoon of turmeric to 4 teaspoons of isopropyl alcohol. So it's a 1-to-4 ratio. Now you can scale up, do 2 teaspoons and what is that? 8 teaspoons of alcohol. So it's a 1-to-4 ratio, however you decide to do that, and you can scale it up. For today, I'm going to go with 1 teaspoon to 4 teaspoons. So I have made myself a little funnel to get this into my test tube. And I'm just using a cup to hold it up. If you're using a jar, you probably don't need to worry about that. Now, I'm making a bit of a mess here. And you can see you don't have to be so perfect about it, okay? It's okay. And I'm just going to put that into my tube, shake it on down. Okay. Oh, come on now. This is a really fresh jar I just opened. Okay. And as you can see, I've already got it all over the place, which is why I've covered my workspace with, with my cardboard just in case. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my alcohol. Like I said, 1 teaspoon of turmeric to 4 teaspoons of alcohol. Now, again, if you have an older turmeric or a less expensive turmeric and you want to add a little extra, you can do that. If you've got a really fresh turmeric, like this one, I almost think maybe I should dilute it by half. Okay, so you can play with that a little bit. This is not a hard and fast rule. This is a place to start and see what you like. The nice thing is if you make something that is more concentrated and it's too yellow for you, you can always add more alcohol and dilute it, right? But you can't, it's harder to add more turmeric later. So I would say go with a higher concentration and dilute if you need to. Okay. So 1, I'm trying not to make a mess. And I am. 2, 3, and 4. There we go. I think I got most of it in there. This is much harder to do when you're trying to do it on camera than it is in real life. Okay. Now I'm going to just cap it, or you would put, the top of your jar on, and I'm going to give it a shake, shake, shake. You really want to give it a good shake. Remember, we're trying to get as much of that curcumin out of the turmeric, all that pigment out of the turmeric, and into the alcohol. So give it a little good, give it a shake. Don't feel like you have to rush that process. Now you can see it's a slurry in here, and you could use it just like this, but it's going to be really inconsistent, and it's going to look pretty grainy. So we're going to let that sit. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I get all this stuff off the sides. We're just going to let that sit for a couple of minutes. And what's going to happen is right now the turmeric is in suspension. It's mixed into the liquid, but it's heavier than the liquid. So it's going to fall down to the bottom, and we're going to have a nice solution at the top that we can use. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so here is the one that I made before where the turmeric is all settled to the bottom, and I've got the clear liquid on top now that I can use. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. So we're just going to go ahead and do what I would call Julia Childs here, right? It's like in the cooking show where they take out a cake and it's like already done in half an hour, or it's already finished. I'm going to make a bit mess, put that into the garbage, the extra turmeric. Okay, so now I'm going to you don't have to do this step if you've got a glass jar that makes it easy. This tube is a little small. I can't get my brush into it. So I'm just going to very carefully pour my turmeric solution into my cup, making sure I don't end up with any of that grainy stuff in there. Okay, there we go. So now I've got my dye solution. And I'm going to grab my paper. Okay, and you're just going to go ahead and coat it. Now you want to try and get a nice even coat, and you do want to really saturate the paper. Okay, you don't want any spots, but you also don't want any like lines. So go ahead and don't be shy. Go ahead and give it all a good coat. Make sure it's as uniform as you can manage. And I like to kind of just go over it one more time when I'm done to make sure it's as nice as I can get it. Now, the amount that we made is enough for one large size, typical piece of watercolor paper. You might even get a little bit more out of it. But I would say the 1 teaspoon to 4 teaspoons ratio is really going to give you one large, standard size piece of watercolor paper. And you're going to want to keep that out of the light, obviously, right? Actually, I guess, no, I'm sorry. I'm speaking incorrectly. I got 2 pieces of watercolor paper out of that one mixture, I think. But I would plan to make a mixture for each piece of paper that you're going to do. And that's, so you can see how it's very easy to scale up if you need to. I mean, heck, you could do, I suppose you could get really crazy and do like 1 cup of turmeric to 4 cups of isopropyl alcohol. And the nice thing is this dye, as long as you keep it out of sun, okay, out of the light, you can use it over, you could store it and use it. Just wrap the whole container in some aluminum foil or put it in the dark so that it doesn't react. But it stores well. So if you plan on doing this a couple times, make it once, pour off the solution, get rid of the old turmeric, and just store it somewhere dark. Same goes for your paper. We're going to take this now and put it in a closet so it can dry. If you have a fan to circulate the air, it will dry even faster. But you want to keep this out of the light until you're ready to use it. So I'm going to go and put mine in the closet now. Okay, we're back. My paper is now a beautiful golden color, and this is, again, very fresh turmeric and a pretty high concentration. So you can bring that down a whole bunch if you want to, but I want to expose my print for quite a while to get as dark a print as I can, so I went pretty heavy. Now the next step is really pretty easy. For example, you just find some items that you want to put on there. I've got these pretty pieces of pine needles that I just took from a tree, and I should have grabbed myself a pair of scissors. I'm just going to kind of lay them out. And again, you can use just about anything here. You may have, if you are a scrapbooker, you may have die cuts around, like little pieces of, you can cut out your own shapes, like I said, jewelry, fabrics, anything that will give you that will block light in some spots and let it through in others. Okay, now this is kind of three-dimensional, so you're going to get some parts are going to be stronger color and some parts are going to be less colored. Okay, and that's all right, because that'll give you kind of that almost 3D effect of your print. So I've got that kind of laid out, you know, and there are people out there that are considerably better at arranging these sorts of things. I'm just going to give it an arrangement that I think looks kind of pretty to me. Now you see that I've got kind of little pieces here. You want to make sure any stray bits are taken care of. You might want to use a paintbrush to kind of deal with that too. I think I'm going to kind of, nope. I liked it better the way I had it. I don't know why I'm messing with it. It looks fine. It looks fine, Sandy. Okay, I've got my piece of glass and I'm just going to put that right over my piece. And then I've got these little binder clips. I keep these around all the time. I might actually I like to use smaller ones for this just because I don't want too much of the binder clip to show up. But you can use larger ones. You know, you could probably figure out a way to rubber band it, but you can see why I took the time to cut my paper to fit my frame ahead of time. It makes it much easier to clip this on. If my paper was bigger than my glass, it's a little more challenging to do this, and you don't get quite as nice a flattening effect. Now, like I said, if you're using 3D items, larger items, you can skip the glass completely. You just want to be careful that whatever you're putting on your paper isn't going to blow away if it's like too windy a day. So take a little time. Sorry, just tough to do. Okay, so there we go. This is all ready to go into the sun. And like I said, I'm going to try and make sure that this goes into the sun. And I'm going to try not to get fingerprints on it, that this goes into the sun somewhere nice and bright, so it's going to get full sun for at least 2 to 3 hours. You'll know that it's done when that yellow is gone and it looks like a very pale yellow or even all the way back to white. That means that all of that pigment has been degraded and your print is complete. And that's going to vary some by your concentration and what turmeric you're using, as well as how direct the sunlight is and whether or not you're doing it indoors or out, how overcast. So basically, you're just going to watch for that yellow to become very pale yellow or white. One last thing, avoid shadows. Any shadows on this print will essentially print. So make sure that you don't have any kind of an overhang, or that if the light isn't direct, you may get some shadows. That could yield some really cool effects, but try to get as few shadows as you can. All right, time to get this out into the sun. Okay, we have exposed our print, and you can see it's pretty white at this point. Most of the yellow is gone, and that's what we're looking for. Okay, so we are going to put that over here, and we're going to just make sure that it, in fact, I'll show you. We're just going to take off all the binder clips. Notice I'm keeping it away from the light because as we take things off, we don't want to continue exposing our print. Okay, we want to be able to get the print that we want here. Just taking off all my binder clips that I put on. I added some extras. I'm going to just put this flat down. This I can discard or reuse if I want. Okay, so I'm just going to, like I said, I'm just keeping this face down because any area that is exposed at this point is going to be any area that's exposed at this point is going to change color, and we don't want that. So we're going to make up our borax solution now. We've got a jar with a good lid. Our borax solution is going to be 4 teaspoons of borax to 1 cup of warm water. Warm water will help the borax dissolve nice and quickly. Now you can of course mix this up before you bring your print inside. In fact, it's usually a good idea to do exactly that. Just a little harder to do when I'm trying to do it for camera. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And just like with our turmeric solution, you can of course adjust how much borax you want to use. If you want to play with the reaction time, you know, get fun, have some fun with it. But I find that this works very well. So 4 teaspoons of water to 1 teaspoons of borax to 1 cup of water. And this is nice because they're kind of easy ratios, right? 1 teaspoon of turmeric to 4 teaspoons of alcohol versus 4 teaspoons of borax to 1 cup of water. Okay. Going to cap this up and give it a good shake. And our goal here is to make sure that we are getting all of it mixed. I've got some pine needles that were falling out over here. This is my tray I'm going to use. You can do this over the sink if you prefer. If you want to transfer this to a spray bottle or a squirt bottle, that's not a bad idea to give you a little more control as you process your print. I'm going to go ahead and just dump this over, but like I said, you can use a spray bottle or a squirt bottle to get more control. And depending on how delicate your print is and that sort of thing, you may want to do that. Okay, looks like that's mixed. And alrighty, I'm actually going to use this one that doesn't have the pine needles in it. Less pine needles in it. Oh my goodness, they're everywhere. And I have plenty of warm water on hand to rinse my print when I'm done. So here we go. Here's our print. That's what it looks like with the foliage taken off. So you can see that's really nice. But before the light gets at it, and it can work pretty quickly, we're going to go ahead and just pour this as evenly as we can over the print, getting the whole paper, making sure we, you know, and it's going to curl some on you. That's normal. Just really try to make sure you get everything pretty evenly. Okay, and you can see that brown coming up as it reacts and fixes the image to our paper. And you can see you get quite a bit of detail there where you can see the kind of 3D nature of those pine needles, some closer to the paper and some further from the paper. So it's really quite beautiful. All right, I think that looks pretty good. You can give it a little while to react if you want to, but it should come up pretty much instantly. And here we go. Now we're going to rinse with water. And this is just to get the borax off. Now, you can, of course, wear gloves for this, but if you don't, make sure that you wash your hands very thoroughly after handling the borax solution. It won't hurt you, but it can make you sick. Okay, it can give you a stomach ache. Not a fun way to spend the day. Okay, that looks pretty well rinsed. I like to give it a really good rinse, make sure it's as much of the borax is off as possible and as much as the turmeric is off as possible, so that we get a really nice print. There we go. At this point, all I need to do is dry it and frame it. All right, And that's how you make an old-fashioned Anthotype using things you probably already have around the house or that you can easily find at the grocery store. And all you need to do is frame your print up, and you've got beautiful wildlife or other fun items that you have printed yourself in your own backyard. It's a great activity now that the days are getting longer and spring is here. What I like to do is make a bunch of the paper, the turmeric paper, in advance. Oop, it's in my way. And I just store it in a paper bag like this. You label it, and then you have it ready to go for any time that you have a nice sunny day and that you want to go ahead and make some prints, or you want to share that activity with friends. So you can do a whole bunch of this all at once, dry it all out, and have it ready to go. I do dry my prints in a dark room with a fan so they dry as flat as possible, but if it does curl on you, put it between two books for a couple of nights and it will flatten out no problem. So there you go. That's your Anthotype. I hope that you have enjoyed this project and that you make something fun. If you do make something, please share it with us at #WarrenLib. We would love to see it. You can also use the #NJMD2021 tag to let people know that you're making things for New Jersey Makers Day, or NJ STEM Month as a hashtag, because that is a great way to let people know that you care about STEM in New Jersey. All right, I hope that you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next year for New Jersey Makers Day. Take care.